Hello, I'm Kathleen Maracchio. I'm a library assistant for San Antonio Public Libraries. And today I will show you how to make a fairy nightlight or character lantern for any space in your home. Well, look at the tools you'll need first. You will need a glue gun to help you affix decorative items to the tops of your lanterns. Also, scissors to help you cut out your figures or silhouettes, the subject of your lanterns. I use a little rubber cement to help me tack those figures, the silhouettes, into the inside of each jar. You will also need to use brushes and some Elmer's Like white glue to help you affix the tissue paper to the outside of your jars. I do recommend this very fine white glitter to be used as decoration or accent on the outside of the lantern before the glue dries. There are many different types of containers, recycled glass and plastic jars that you can use as lanterns, anything from pickle and spaghetti sauce jars to plastic containers that once held cashews. You will need to save and use the lids, whether it's for the top or the bottom of your lantern, as you'll see later on. My trip to the dollar store was very helpful. I was able to find florals, as well as ribbon and other items to decorate my lantern. I've even recycled some fabric from my sewing kit to use as a cover for any lids I wish to decorate. Now, as for the tissue paper, which will be glued to the outside of the jars, it is recommended you use white tissue paper. I've chosen the white tissue paper with multicolored sparkles. And if I must use color, then I would use a pastel. Now, finding subjects for the lanterns can be fun, but also challenging. For my Under the Sea lantern, I found the figures I was looking for in this mermaid coloring book, also found at the dollar store. The items inside that I liked, I cut out and pasted to another piece of paper, and then after filling them in to create a silhouette with a black marker or Sharpie, I'm able to cut them out again and use them as the subject of my lantern. There's more than one way to find subjects you're looking for. On Pinterest, I was able to find these fairy and whimsical characters under the heading Fairy Silhouettes or Fantasy Cutouts. These are free downloadable printables, and if the fairy items are a little too feminine or not the characters that you're looking for, you can change it up by using a different subject heading in your search, such as animal, nature, or wolf, such as this, or owls, or the Day of the Dead theme, such as this sugar skull cat I found, which I think will look great in one of the larger containers. Well, we will get to crafting, and I'll show you how to begin. Okay, let's get to crafting. As I told you earlier, the darker and more distinct the figure you use for your silhouette, the better the final effect will be in your lantern. I have used the scissors to carefully cut out my figure, and I will be using just a little bit of rubber cement to carefully affix this to the side on the inside of my jar, just like so, with my fingers. And you'll see that I've been able to accomplish this with the mermaids I've already applied. So I did decide that I like the sugar skull cat so much that I do wish to use it next. And I'll be using that in my large glass jar. I'll show you how that's done. If this rubber cement container did not already have a brush, I could easily use one of these brushes. And I don't want too much. I don't want to make the paper very wet or cause it to tear. So I'm just going to use just enough of the rubber cement on the front side of my figure and carefully insert it inside the jar with my hand so that I can affix it to the inside, just like so. Now I've decided that I don't want it all the way to the bottom. I want some light to come up from the bottom, as well as around the sides of my figure and on the top. I'm gently pressing the silhouette into the side, the inside of the jar, just like so. And there we have that stage of our craft complete. Next, I'm going to put the tissue paper on the outside of our jar. I'm actually going to use the jar to measure the tissue paper to make sure I have enough. And I do want to cover the bottom of the jar. So I'll measure it in this way to make sure there's enough to cover the entire surface of the bottom. And I do want to make sure I have enough to go all the way around my jar. I don't want too big a seam because I don't want to prevent light coming through the tissue paper, so I will be cutting off the excess. Alrighty. So I'll just use my scissor to do that now. And I want to tell you that once I start applying the glue, it will become quick work as the paper becomes very delicate and can tear, so I want to save the scraps I'm cutting off as patches. And I won't need this much for the top because I want the paper to come just to the bottom of the thread on the mouth of the jar, because I want the lid, such as I've already decorated, to go easily on and off to change the light. All right, so I know I won't need to cut very much from this top portion. I don't want to cut off too much, so I'm being cautious as I start. I can always cut off more if I have to. Okay. Now this next part goes quickly. Again, I'll check to make sure I have enough, and I do. I want the seam to actually be on the back of the jar and not in front of my figural. So I'll move it just like that. And I'm going to be using the white Elmer's Light glue. And I'm going to use this ice cream cup as a recycled container to better work with and hold the glue. I have just enough in there right now. And again, this starts to make the paper very delicate, so I have to work quickly once I start to apply the glue with my brush. Alrighty. I do want to make sure that I'm putting the glue on the outside of the jar, wherever I want the tissue paper to stick. And because the paper will cling right away, I want to make very quick work of it. Alrighty. Just like so. It's not important to make a perfectly smooth adhesion because it's okay to have imperfections. It adds more interest to the lantern in the end. Okay, and I'm going to continue around the sides here and up to just below the top lip of the mouth of the jar. And right across the front of the jar. And I'm working quickly because I know the glue is going to dry rather quickly. And so I'm just going to wrap the jar just like so. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. And now the paper is very delicate because it's wet with glue. And I think I will be taking off the excess from the seam, because again, the larger the seam, the less light shines through your lantern. And it should not be perfect. The glue will help to hide on the outside a lot of the imperfections. So I'm gluing down the seam just like so, but being very gentle. And now I'm going to work on the bottom. But first I notice, I'm going to have to make patches just like I said. There they are now. Well, I can do that very easily. I'm going to cut some squares of tissue. And with a little bit of glue, very gently, on the bald spot there on the glass. And now press this patch onto it. And with the brush and more glue, add my patch. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect, just interesting. There we are. I've added yet another smaller patch. And I have my hand inside the mouth of the jar to protect the outside from any more tears. And I am adding more glue where I think it's needed to even out the patches that I've just applied. Okay, so now I'm going to very carefully, with my hand still in the jar, apply glue to the bottom, just like so. Make sure to cover all of the surface and get the edges. And now I'm actually folding down the paper with the brush that I'm putting glue on every few strokes, just like that, in an effort to get that evenly covered. Again, I have to make quick work of it because the paper gets very delicate the more glue I put on it. All right, so now we've come to the part where we're dealing with the mouth of our jar. And again, I do have more than I need at the top. So with my hand still in the jar, I'm going to cut off some of that excess. Just like that. It might get a little messy with some of the glue. That's okay. Just like so. And with the glue and this brush, I'm now going to push the paper down onto the lip of the jar, just beneath where you see the lid would screw on. Just like that. I'm going to work quickly and just gently tap it down. Any extra glue I will be wiping off with a paper towel. Just like so. As it dries, it will look even neater, and you'll have a very nice finished product. So as you can see, that was rather quick. And now I'm going to cover my glue and work on taking off the excess before it dries, where I need my lid to go on. All right, so it is very delicate, and I'm carefully placing it down to dry, just like this. So we will leave this here for at least 2 hours to dry. And when we come back, I'll show you how to add some decorative accents to the top, and we'll get a look at our lights, our character lanterns, lit and functioning. I'm just going to tip it so I can get my hand inside it again. And I will, over this paper, just gently sprinkle some of this in key places. I don't want to cover up the figural that you see inside there. I'm going to frame it with the sparkles. And I'll do the same to the one on the other side. And I might put some just around the figure and on the top, just enough to aid the lantern effect and give it a little more whimsy. There we are. And once again, continue to let it dry. Well, with that part complete, I'd like to show you how I decorate the top of one that has already dried. Right here. And I'll be using the glue gun for this part. And some of the accents I picked up that I showed you earlier, the florals, and even some things I found outside, such as these palmetto and palm tree nuts. I put some glitter on them with the use of some rubber cement, and I took apart some of the florals. So with the use of this glue gun, I'll get that on the top of this particular lantern. So the way you decorate the top does determine the theme. This is the fairy lantern, so I am using what look like natural outside materials to further the theme of this particular lantern. The glue dries quickly, so again, I'm going to work as quickly as I can. I like the look of these white flowers. Just like so. And I can get very creative and sculptural. It doesn't have to be flat. Sometimes it can be very dimensional, like you see here. Next, I'll show you how we insert the tea light. So I make sure it works first. And you'll see I've decorated this lid using more of the floral accents, using my glue gun. And I'm just going to put the tea light right in the middle and close it like so. And there we have it, a finished character lantern. For more information, visit mysapl.org or call 210-207-2500.